Hello, and welcome to Distillations. I'm Alexis Petrick. Last year, in response to the coronavirus pandemic, we produced a series of interviews focused entirely on COVID-19 called Pandemic Perspectives. We interviewed people working at the heart of the crisis, including biomedical researchers, physicians, and public health experts. Today, we have a special Pandemic Perspectives episode for you. Our producer, Rigoberto Hernandez, spoke with Moderna CEO Stéphane Bancel. You've probably heard of this biotech startup because, well, they developed one of 3 emergency-approved COVID-19 vaccines in the United States. The Moderna vaccine is unique in that it uses a new technology that's been in the making for decades. It's called messenger RNA, or mRNA, and here's how it works. Almost everything our bodies do relies on proteins. As a result, we're constantly producing them. Now, think back to high school biology class. DNA is shaped like a double helix with 2 strands that look like a twisted staircase. In order to make proteins, your body makes a copy of a strand of the double helix. This copy is known as messenger RNA. Remember, this strand is kind of like computer code with all the information your body needs to make certain types of protein. Your cells take that genetic code and make proteins based on that information. Your body has something like 20,000 instruction sets to make all kinds of proteins, like insulin, for example. The Moderna and Pfizer BioNTech vaccines are unique because they're essentially instructions that tell your body to make the spike protein that the coronavirus is famous for. It doesn't tell your body to make the virus, just that spike protein so that your immune system recognizes it and develops antibodies to fight off the virus if it ever comes in contact with it. In this interview, Bancel reflects on the extremely quick timeline for developing the vaccine, the promise of mRNA technology, and what people can expect from Moderna going forward.
Can we start with an introduction? Can you introduce yourself, how you would like to be known?
My name is Stéphane Bancel. I'm the CEO of Moderna.
So you joined Moderna in 2011, and Moderna is known for its messenger RNA technology, which at the time was very promising technology, but it wasn't widely known. And you could say that it was risky. Could you walk me through what made you join Moderna?
Yeah, so the idea of using messenger RNA back in 2011 was a bit of a crazy idea. We all believed in the field that messenger RNA could not be a safe drug because it was believed to be unstable as a molecule and was believed to be highly immunogenic, so giving you flu-like symptoms when you inject that molecule into the human body. I actually told my wife, who is a photographer and does not understand science very well, I told her that this was a 5% chance that this was going to work in the sense of having the ability to make safe mRNA that will be efficacious, that will make the medicine that you need in somebody's body.
I see. But you as a person joining the CEO of a company, what was the calculus? What made you decide to jump into? You had a nice job before this. What made you join a startup?
It's the chance of changing medicine forever. The piece that was really exciting to me as I first heard about the idea of using messenger RNA and after a phase of denial that this was never going to work and was crazy, the piece that actually gave me a lot of energy and got me very excited is the notion that because mRNA is an information molecule, if you could make it work once, it will work for a lot of things, a lot of medicine. And this could change medicine because you could make people make their own medicine by sending an instruction set. A piece of mRNA is an information molecule. It's a piece of code. It just instructs a cell to make the protein you want. In the case of a COVID-19 vaccine, which many people are aware of, we basically instruct your body to make the spike protein of a virus. You don't make the virus. We don't give you a virus. We just give you a set of code so that in your own machinery, in your cells, with the machinery you use just to be alive and to live every day, and you have since you were one cell in your mom's womb, is this machinery that we have found the ability to instruct to make the protein that we design.
Yeah. I think a lot of us are very curious about the lead up to the Moderna vaccine. And I'm hoping you can walk me through some of the key moments in the timeline. And let's start with the very beginning when there's news coming out of China in December 30th that there's a strange pneumonia coming out of Wuhan, China. What's going through your head when you learn about the virus? And what is the response you had in your company?
So what's going to my head is we can help. Before that time, Moderna had done 9 different vaccines in clinical studies, and we had learned a lot. Our first one was in December 2015. So here you are in December 2019. That's 4 years of testing many vaccines, learning, improving the technology, improving manufacturing. I think at that time we were at our 5th or 6th manufacturing process iteration to make it better and better. And so, I have a chance for 25 years in my career to always have worked for companies that have done infectious disease. And as a young professional, I lived in Japan, in Asia. And I was really literally traumatized. I think it must have been the first year in the job where Japan was hit with a very bad food poisoning outbreak caused by a bacteria where children were dying. And we were the only company with a robotic machine to be able to do testing. And so we were already working 24/7 nonstop with a team. And that trauma really made me always very curious about, viruses, always aware that we're always a day away from a new virus or a new bacteria causing a lot of pain and hurt and public health, crisis. And so actually, I'm the one who actually was reading the Wall Street Journal when I heard of that virus, who literally emailed the NIH and emailed my team back in Boston because this happened during Christmas and New Year of 2019. I was actually vacationing in France with my family for the holidays. And the first thing that came to my mind is, geez, if this thing is real, we can help, because it was very clear to us that messenger RNA was the fastest technology known to us that could move quickly from the genetic sequence of a new virus, which I knew was very easily done and quick and cheap, to getting a vaccine moving to clinical studies.
Yeah, and what makes it so different is the fact that, as opposed to other vaccines that are made with either dead virus or a very small amount of the virus, this one doesn't require any of that, which must have been very helpful in order to fast that timeline needed to create a vaccine.
Yes, I mean, the piece that got me most excited about mRNA that has been proven time and time over is that because mRNA is an information molecule, using 4 letters, software is coded in 0 and 1, when any protein in life across species, a plant, a fish, a monkey, a dog, a human, it's the same 4 letters. And that system, that coding system, makes mRNA as a molecule a platform.
Mm-hmm.
Because once you know how to make a flu vaccine where you put the instruction set for, let's say, one protein of the flu virus or the Zika virus, which we have done as well, then when the coronavirus SARS-CoV-2 appears on the planet, and once you get posted online the sequence, the genomic information of the entire virus, you can go and literally pick with your mouse on the computer the instruction for that protein spike. You copy and then you paste it into let's say, the flu vaccine of Moderna. And here you go again, you have a new drug. And that ability to replicate drugs so quickly was literally science fiction 10 years ago. And what we've done over the last 10 years by investing a lot in science is to take the word fiction out of science fiction. Is this ability that you will have a platform like exists in the tech world was revolutionary in my industry. I used to work, at Eli Lilly, which is an amazing company. If you look at the big pharma company, what technology do they have? If I simplify, they have small molecule technology, which is old small molecule entities, which is the old traditional pharma from more than 100 years ago. And amazing medicines have been made like Lipitor and Prozac over the years. And then since the 70s and 80s, you had the recombinant technology, what has been called the biotech technology, which is basically instructing, initially E. coli cells, bacteria cells, to make a human protein by inserting the human instruction of a protein. The first one was, human insulin and human growth hormone. that Genentech did way back then. And you will make that in a big reactor with a lot of bacteria cells. And then you will purify, you will extract the protein of interest, the human protein, and then you put it in a vial, and that will make a biotech product. And so if you think about those two technologies I just described, a small molecule on the one hand and large molecule or biotech product, those products, every product is different. The manufacturing process, the chemistry route, like the one you did in high school, how you get to a compound, all those things are different for every compound. And so every time you invent a new drug in the lab, you need an army of chemists to figure out how do you make it. And then when you have a drug in the lab that you think is interesting and safe enough that you can take it to the clinic, then you need an army of engineers this time to figure out how to make high quantity of that drug in FDA guidelines manufacturing processes to ensure the safety and the robustness of a process, the purity of a product, and so on. But every time is different. So sometimes it will take you a long time because it's not easy. Well, the piece that really, got my head spinning when I heard about mRNA medicine as a concept back in 2011 was this notion that if you could figure out how to do it once, it made no scientific sense that you will be done. And so what was very interesting as we build the company and a lot of things we've done at Moderna, people sometimes, criticize or frown upon, even in the industry and the media, is because we always say this could not be a one-drug company. It will be zero because we will run out of money and we'll go bankrupt before we get the first product approved. Or it will be dozens and dozens and dozens of drugs coming out of this technology. Because, again, mRNA is an information molecule. Because the raw material that we use is genetic information, either from your DNA, from humans, or from sequence of a virus, is that it made no scientific sense it will be a one-drug company. It will be zero or a lot.
Yeah. So it's going back to the fact that all you need is like the genetic sequence of the virus to make the compound. So when that sequence was posted on January 10, what was the atmosphere at Moderna? Because you go from December 30th to January 10th. That's like just like a couple weeks, and you already have what you need.
Correct. What we were waiting between me reading about this virus on the Wall Street Journal and contacting the NIH and contacting my team in Boston, and it was a sequence, was tell us the genomic information of this virus, because until you tell me that, I can do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But what is very interesting compared to traditional technology, I don't need the virus.
Right.
What is really amazing for me to tell you how much of a step forward in science this whole mRNA technology is we designed this vaccine in 48 hours on a computer. We never had access to a virus physically. And that's basically the vaccine that has been authorized by the FDA and has been given to 100 plus million people. And that's for me the incredible science fiction-like aspect of it, which is if you go back in a time machine and you go 10 years ago and you tell scientists in pharmaceutical companies, in the future you'll be able to design a virus from only its genetic information and nothing else, most people in industry would have been laughing. What are you talking about?
Yeah. And then after the January 10 sequences, it just takes 42 days for you to be able to send something to the National Institutes of Allergy and Infectious Disease in Maryland. Do I have that timeline right? And what was the moment like to just 42 days after its sequence? So we have December 30th, then January 10th, then 42 days later, you're already sending something to Bethesda, Maryland.
Correct. So basically what we did is when we designed the vaccine and when my scientists click order on our website that looks a little bit like the Amazon website, two things happen at the same time. One is it went to robots that make non-clinical material that you can test in animal. So that happened very quick in a week or so. And then animal work starts at the NIH where we send them samples and in our lab in Cambridge. And in parallel at the same time, it was just business risk. It was only risk with money. We took the business risk because we knew every day mattered. When you have a new virus, time is not your friend, to start making clinical grade product. Because again, we believed the vaccine that the team I designed on the computer had a very, very high chance of working because we've done many vaccines before. mRNA is an information molecules and all the things we talked about. And so we took the business risk to make the mRNA to say, okay, if we have confirmation in animal, it's looking good. We will have the vaccine ready to start a clinical trial. And indeed, in 42 days, we shipped it to the NIH, where Dr. Fauci and his team took it into a phase 1.
Yeah. There's like a now somewhat famous press conference in which the President Trump gathers heads of other pharmaceutical companies, and they talk about a possible timeline, and they speak about years, others speak about 18 months. But then you say that, well, actually, I already sent something out.
So the Moderna team in Massachusetts is very proud to be working with the US government and to have already sent in only 42 days from the sequence of a virus or vaccine to Dr. Fauci's team at the NIH. We're now waiting for the vaccine to be green light from the FDA. The product is at the NIH, and then it's going to be a few months to get the human data that will allow us to pick a therapeutic dose to start the phase 2 right away.
So you're talking over the next few months, you think you could have a vaccine?
Correct. With phase 2.
Yeah. You won't have a vaccine, you'll have a vaccine to go into testing.
Phase 2, yes.
And how long would that take?
The phase 2 will take a few months before we can go into phase 3.
Oh, so you're talking within
About a year, like I've been telling you.
Yeah. Well,
A year to
but
a year.
Lenny is talking about 2 months, right?
And we would be there in June.
What made you speak up? What made you want to say something about that moment?
I mean, a few things. First, I was invited by the President of the United States to the White House with my colleagues and the key government officials, like the head of FDA, the head of CDC, Dr. Fauci, who runs NIAID, as everybody knows. And so first I was there to give an update to the US government of what we had done and what we were planning to do. And so it was my responsibility to inform the president and his advisors of the situation and the facts. And we are a science-based organization and data are friends. And so I basically explained what we had done to date. And I explained in my best judgment what I believed could happen and in what type of time frame, which was indeed months and not years.
I think the tension really is that you have an administration that wants to have a vaccine fast for political reasons, but you're doing science and business. Did you feel the tension of the political pressures with the pressures of a raging pandemic that you have a vaccine for?
So it's interesting. Every day since last year, starting to chase this virus, we've had a lot of pressure that we put on ourselves because we knew every day mattered and people were going to die. People were going to get hospitalized. Kids will be out of school and have, learning inequalities. People will lose their jobs. So that has been the tension, the pressure we felt because we understand infectious disease. But I can tell you last year, not once, we got pressured to go faster or to cut corners. We got a lot of help. And that's one of the things I really want to, again, thank the US government. We got funding. We got a lot of funding, Moderna has got more than $1 billion so that we could take a lot of business risk because that's the only way to save time. You cannot compromise on quality because quality in the drug development is a no-go. It's a no-go ethically, and it's a no-go from a regulatory standpoint. As you know, we're a very strong regulatory agency with the FDA in the US, made of scientists and clinicians that are extremely capable, most probably one of the best, if not the best in the world. And cutting time by cutting corners never even crossed our minds. Because again, we're in the business of trying to help people, not trying to hurt people. But what the US government did by giving us all those resources was to be able to do things in parallel or things at risk, at business risk, to save time. The best example I've used is in a typical drug development. You do your phase 1, you wait for your data, and then you go see the regulator to ask, can I go to phase 2? If they give you okay, then you start making the phase 2 drug. Because as most drugs fail in phase 1, you're not going to spend the money to make the phase 2 drug if you're never going to use it. What did we do last year? Because we were sponsored by the US government and quality was not negotiable, but everything we can cut in time was appreciated and meaningful. We started making the phase 2 material as the first people were getting injected in a phase 1. Meaning, if a phase 1 had failed because of safety reason, or if lack of making protein and antibodies, we will never have gone into phase 2. And that phase 2 material that we made for several $1 million would have been going to the garbage. But that was a risk that the government was willing to take. And we were willing to execute on it because we thought on a risk return standpoint for the American people and for the world, it was the best thing to do. The only downside, if we were wrong, and thankfully we were right on the quality of the vaccine, if we were wrong, was money going down the drain, but not hurting anybody.
Yeah. So when you start doing trials, what was that feeling like when some of the first people kind of stepped up and said, I'll take the risk to do tested? You're at a timeline that takes 10 years, and now suddenly you're within 6 to 7 months.
Yeah, so I think we're all very focused on the goal, which is to get a safe, effective vaccine to the finish line. We were not worried about safety. This is a platform, as we discussed. This was not our first vaccine. This was our 10th vaccine in human. And we had refined the technology every time with improvements. So I never worried about the safety. And I didn't worry too much about the ability to make neutralizing antibody. Because again, this is a platform. We've done it many times before. Every time we did it correctly, it worked. And so I never worried about it. I had, of course, moments of doubts because, when you're a day or two and you're waiting for the data, you start going in your head in a bad place, say, oh, geez, if this doesn't work, if we made a mistake here, if even the assay, the test to test the blood is wrong, we're going to think the vaccine doesn't work, but the vaccine works, the test will be wrong. So there's a lot of things that you go through your checklist of all the things that could go wrong, or somebody making a mistake and they give a placebo when they think they give the drug to a person. So you have always a lot of stress in the last days before the data comes. It was true for the phase 1. The phase 2, which was really about doing more people exposed to the vaccine, I was not worried at all because, again, we've done many studies. But the phase 3, I would say the 5 days, I think it was, between the team telling us we have all the data, we have enough patients to start counting cases, and we need to educate every case with the doctors and the independent safety board to understand the efficacy of the vaccine. Yeah, those 5 days, I didn't sleep super well. I was super nervous, and not for any logical reason. It was just purely emotional. Because I knew what was at stake for the world, for the US, for our chance to help a lot of people. And as you can imagine, like all my teammates, we wanted so bad the result to be positive so that we could be sliding to the FDA authorization so that we could get the vaccine out of the door and start to vaccinate people. Because if you recall, this was happening in the fall when cases were going up as was expected because it's a respiratory virus. So winters, as people spend more time indoors, we are unfortunately seeing in the South right now as they go into their winter, is always dreadful for respiratory virus that is new. So most people are not immunized to it, either through natural infection over the years or through vaccination. And so there was just a lot of angst that we wanted so bad the result to be good so that we could help a lot of people.
Yeah. And in fact, you got good results. These kind of vaccines are measured by their efficacy rate. And Moderna came back with a 95% efficacy rate. And this is a really good number for context for people. This is like the flu vaccine can be 50% or 30%. What was it like to receive a 95% efficacy rate?
It was really amazing. I mean, I heard about it on the Sunday afternoon. Dr. Fauci was also on a call when we were told the result because I said, it is not my team who told me the result. It's an independent safety board that had staff from NIH and other clinicians on it. And so Dr. Fauci was on a call too, where he was also for the first time hearing it. And so we are pretty ecstatic about the data. And I was at home at the time because it was a Sunday. And I remember, going out and calling my wife. She knew the data was going to come anytime. And I basically, started crying because I was so happy and so relieved that we were going to be able to help a lot of people.
Yeah. And so when you get that efficacy rate, the move towards emergency authorization is also swift. And then suddenly you're able to now bring it to millions of Americans, which I think at this, as I checked, it was like 40 million people have received the Moderna shots.
I think more now. I think it is actually, if you look at it, there are 107 million doses in the US on the CDC website today that have been injected.
Oh, wow.
And 43 million Americans that have been fully vaccinated with the 2 doses.
We talked about earlier how the US government kind of underwrote the costs associated with creation of this vaccine. And I was reading that they pledged to buy 100 million doses at a $25 per dose cost, which gives Moderna a profit. I don't think you're going to find people who are upset about what Moderna is doing because it clearly is saving millions of lives. But I'm wondering how you would address the profit angle of this enterprise.
Sure. So first thing is just to correct things. We're selling it to the US government at around $16.50 per dose. And we gave the US government a discount versus other countries because of the help that we got. So we basically discounted the $1 billion that we got in help to develop the vaccine because we're very, very sensitive and thankful and respectful of taxpayer dollar that we got. And so we deducted that versus what, let's say, Europe or other countries have been paying for the very same vaccine, which we thought was fair. In terms of making a profit versus selling the product at no profit, it goes back to what happened over the last 10 years. Over the last 10 years, we raised, I think, close to $5 billion that were invested to get the technology to this place. And so as we thought about the pricing of a vaccine, we spent a lot of time, as you can imagine, with the board thinking about it. And it went from, should we charge no profit for the product? Should we charge what should be a fair market price? And one example of what could have been a fair market price is if you look at analyses that have been done by very prestigious, very serious academic group that look at the value of drugs. There is a Harvard group that has done analysis at the Harvard Public Health saying that the COVID vaccine at around 95% efficacy, which is our efficacy, should be worth $100 to $200 per dose because of just of the direct savings of preventing direct hospitalization costs. And you can do those maths and those type of groups do that for a living. So we could have done that type of price and we say, no, look, it's not responsible given the incredible numbers of those you need to get out. And so we tried to find a price that was not at no profit, that was not at fair value for the product, but was massively discounted to fair value, again, $100 to $200 compared to $16.50. And that's a bit how we came to a conclusion. It was, we think about the ecosystem here. There's a lot of investors, VCs, early stage growth investors who literally put billions of dollars, as I described, to make this technology work. And we thought it was not a good sign to the industry for future innovation and other companies. We clearly becoming profitable will not need more funding from investors, but a lot of companies will need to. And we thought about it with the board and we're like, geez, if we don't make any profit on the product, are we actually going to hurt industry moving forward? Not us, because we don't need the money again anymore, new funding money. But are we going to hurt the industry because some investors are going to think about it twice. Say, geez, should I invest in that technology? Because if they get a product that at that time is important for public health, they will make no profit and I will never make a return on my capital. And that's how we kind of slowly thread the needle. It was not an easy discussion. We didn't decide in 5 minutes or in one meeting. We had many discussions about it to try to find the right path forward. And I think overall, we did a good job to find a path that is not maximizing value, not at cost, but something that is close to cost, but with a bit of profit so that it will send the right signals and help us invest in more product. No, that money, we're not going to turn around and give a dividend to investors. No, we're going to turn around and use that money to do more. One example we announced a week ago is that because of the other vaccines that have not succeeded, other vaccines that have had safety concerns that are on the market today, that the world needs more mRNA vaccine. We're getting very clear signal from governments around the world. And so 10 days ago, we announced that we are investing to go from 1 billion to 3 billion of manufacturing supply next year. And that is with the investment of billions of dollars into buying more machines, hiring more people, buying more raw material, getting more clean suites from partners. And that is basically the profit that we are making this year on the vaccine that we are right away turning around and investing to make more vaccine, to do more good for the world. And that's a good example of how we want to use the profit. It is not to pay dividends. It is to do more medicine, either more COVID vaccines or more vaccine or more medicine using mRNA to help other people and to create, if you want, an upward spiral to maximize our impact.
Yeah. It's so interesting that when I think about the pharmaceutical industry, it's like usually making pills that people have to take for life, and that's how you make a profit. But it's interesting that suddenly, they don't like vaccines, investors, because you only take it once and that's it. So it's interesting that because of a vaccine that Moderna has had so much success. It's kind of, I don't know if ironic is the right word, but it's a little funny twist of fate that Moderna is a vaccine. Is it a vaccine company? Can I say that? Or
No, it's an mRNA company. It's actually
it's a platform, mRNA platform company.
It's actually the best mRNA company in terms of its breadth and so on, and it's all its technology we developed over time. We're not a vaccine company, and we're not a COVID-19 vaccine company. We just happen to have one of the best COVID vaccine in the world.
Right. Did you get it? When did you get it? Can you take me through you getting it yourself?
Yeah, so I got vaccinated on January the 3rd. It was a Sunday. We had decided with the board after many discussions that we needed to vaccinate the employees very quickly because in the fall, as the country was going through a lot of infection, we were getting employees that were testing positive, not from the factory where everybody was masked, a lot of cleaning and social distancing, but mostly on weekends. I have a family contamination or friends, like it's typically been reported by the CDC. And so the big challenge it was giving us was that when somebody is down because he or she is sick and has to be at home in quarantine, first, because with the quarantine app on everybody's phone, we will quarantine everybody that had been potentially contaminated to reduce the spread, as we should do. But then think about the number of operators we're taking out of a shop floor. And those were the very men and women making the vaccines. And so I remember one day going to the board in the fall, it's like, as soon as the vaccine is authorized, we need to vaccinate everybody in the company because we cannot take the risk. The 1,000+ people that have to make the vaccine for the planet makes less doses to help other people because they are sick. And so I got my vaccine on the campus of a factory. We basically had a team of nurses from a local hospital that we are contracting and paying, coming to vaccinate the team. I got my dose. It was an extraordinary feeling. You can imagine working 10 years on the science and working nonstop for a year. And I never thought I would get a Moderna product injected in my body. And of course, given the pandemic, actually, I got the first Moderna product ever authorized by the FDA injected in my body. And it was, cool for the first 48 hours to think about the science, what was happening in my body, where my body was turning into a little factory and making for 48 hours the spike protein and my immune system seeing it and getting super upset with it and making an antibody that would protect me in case I get later COVID.
Yeah. Speaking of the 2 doses, there's been a lot made about the fact that there's 2 doses and that because of that, some people are skipping the second dose. I know that you talked about potentially creating a 1-dose shot. Where is that in your priority list? Why is it important to do that?
I believe a 2-dose is really important to provide you more antibodies. What has been shown and published in peer-reviewed journal is that the second dose gives you much more antibody. So it gets you more concentration in your blood to protect you. And then what also we believe it does is to give you more duration of protection. So we are not working on the single-dose vaccine. What we're working on is on the single-dose boost. We believe that the vaccination will not last all your life. We believe actually it might be a year or 2, depending on your age and also on the variant. Because if you get a variant that is very different from the vaccine you got initially, that will impact it and reduce its efficacy. But we believe a 1-dose boost will be enough because given you've already been vaccinated, it's basically re-teaching your immune system or kind of literally boosting your immune system to do more. But the initial vaccination, we are not working and never really have been on the single-dose vaccination. We believe the 2 doses are really important.
Speaking of vaccines, there's like 2 other companies that have emergency use authorization, the Pfizer, BioNTech, and also Johnson & Johnson. But the Pfizer one is the one that is also a messenger RNA. And I think that a lot of us are seeing, what's the difference? What is the difference between Moderna and Pfizer? There are some differences. Can you tell us what they might be and how should we look at the different kinds of options that are available to people?
Yeah, so let's start with some obvious differences to the final consumer, because there's also differences to the pharmacists and to the doctors. But to the consumer, I would say the 2 products use indeed the similar technology. But for example, the chemistry we use is different. In the case of the Moderna vaccine, you get 100 microgram of mRNA. In the case of Pfizer vaccine, you get 30 microgram. So you get more. We believe it will be helpful over time to get more. We could give more because the product was well tolerated from a safety standpoint. And we believe, especially for people at higher risk, people with comorbidity, people that are elderly. This over time should help. We don't have a data yet because, as you know, for all the vaccines, we looked at efficacy right after dosing, where you get a lot of antibodies anyway. Some of the difference is also around the pharmacist, because in our case, the product is stored at minus 20, in the case 20 Celsius. In the case of Pfizer, it's minus 70 Celsius. Then our product, instead of being a week at fridge temperature, can be a month at fridge temperature, which is easier to handle. When you get the product, you do not need for Moderna to dilute it. In the case of a Pfizer vaccine, you need to dilute it. So it's much more work and more complicated to maneuver and more costly to maneuver for a Pfizer vaccine. But the underlying technology is similar. I think over time, what we're going to be doing for Moderna is going for variant booster. And we have already shown that we can do several mRNA molecules in the same vial to boost against multiple variants, which is what we think is going to be giving the best vaccine down the road. And to this day, Pfizer has not been able to show in the clinic that they can put several mRNA. I'm sure one day they will, but it might also help us in the future to bring to the market a booster that gives you more protection than if you have only one mRNA molecule into it.
Putting the Moderna COVID vaccine in historical context, how do you hope that people will remember this breakthrough in science?
I think they will see it as the beginning of a new era of medicine. As I described earlier, for the last 100 plus years, pharmaceutical drugs were mostly pills made of small chemical products with a lot of side effects, where most drugs failed in clinical trial. That's what we all remember. For the last 50 years, since Genentech and Amgen and all those amazing companies started making biotech products, we had a new class of medicine with much less side effects, going after disease that we could not really address before, and that has transformed the life of millions of people. And I think the next chapter in the history of medicine, as we look back, in 10, 20 years, that big pivot moment with this new class of medicine, mRNA, will be the pandemic. Because, our plans was to launch our first product a few years from now, not in December 2020. And because so many people got the product of either Pfizer or Moderna, which are relying on the same core technology, I think it will be the pivot point in history in medicine, which is there will be a time after COVID and a time before COVID in terms of medicines. At Moderna, we have right now 24 medicines with mRNA in development. I'm not even talking about the labs. We have many more in the labs. But if you look at what we are doing, we are, of course, going after many more vaccines that are addressing viruses that have no vaccine on the market today. So viruses that hurt humans for which there is no hope or no answer today. So that's one thing we are doing. We're also having 5 drugs in cancer to do new things. It's not to do a copy drug of what's done by other technology, but a very new approach to cancer, including a product that is a personalized cancer medicine, where we make a medicine just for you based on the genetic information of your cancer cell. So very, very tailored. We have medicines against cardiac disease. Like there's a medicine that we inject in people's heart after a heart attack, and that's happening in the clinic right now, where people that had a heart attack get our drug to build new blood vessel in their body, like regenerative medicine, so that you can bring back oxygen and nutrient to the heart tissue that has been damaged through the infarct. We're very soon going to be in a clinic with rare genetic disease and also with autoimmune disease. So if you think about it over time, this is basically a new class of medicine that has seen its infancy through the pandemic.
We talked about the fact that Moderna never had a product to market. And for the first product to be a COVID vaccine to market, that's a pretty huge accomplishment. And I'm wondering if you feel some sort of vindication, or do you feel like you've been proven right for your belief in mRNA?
So that has never been a goal of ours. We're a very mission-centric team. I joined this company when it was one scientist and a crazy idea, with 5% chance of working, because this could change medicine forever. It was not to prove people that I was right, or this has never been driving me. What gives me energy is to help people. That's what I'm so happy about and proud of, even though I'm the type of person who thinks mostly forward, not backward. So, we don't spend days, looking and say, oh, today there's a million more people with a vaccine, even though this is great and this is the truth. We look forward, say, okay, how do we get the adolescent indication? How do we get the pediatric indication? How do we get a variant boost vaccine for the South Africa variant? How do we get a flu vaccine in the clinic? So we're always looking forward to do more, which I know sometimes is not great because sometimes you need to spend time, celebrating the milestones, celebrating the achievements. But most probably because just of my personality, I tend to look forward, which has its plus and minuses. And so I'm always trying to think, okay, what's the next thing we can do so we can help more people?
Thank you so much, Stéphane, for your time. I really do appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome. We got into this business, 10 years ago to make medicine to help people. We, of course, never thought we'll have such an opportunity to help so many so fast. We're very humbled by the opportunity we were given. And I'm very thankful to the team for the relentless work, not only the last 10 years to get us ready for this moment, but for what people have done the last 12 months. The personal sacrifice that the team have done have been just incredible.
Thank you so much, Stéphane. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Stay safe.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Pandemic Perspectives. As always, you can find all of our episodes plus transcripts and show notes at distillations.org. And you can find tons of educational resources on our website at sciencehistory.org/learn. The Science History Institute remains committed to revealing the role of science in our world. Please support our efforts at sciencehistory.org. Give now. For Distillations, I'm Alexis Petrick.